Thanks, Amanda. This session then will focus on Exchange Online and its ability to free up scarce IT resources for small medium-sized operations so that they're no longer running day-to-day email infrastructure and instead can focus on projects that are going to be of direct importance to the company and its profitability. So without further ado, let's have a brief discussion about the client. Well, they are ladies' clothing retailer with 200 staff spread over a variety of locations. There are, for example, a warehouse, there are high street stores, there is also an administrative HQ. So this leads really to multiple staff requirements. So for example, you have desk-bound users with their own laptops, PCs. You have people working in the shop who probably have their own profile and log on to a shared PC. And then finally you have people on the work on the warehouse floors who probably use web apps to access applications such as email. So distinct sides of the business, but part of the project, part of the requirements of the project from the customer's perspective is that they wish to have a universal similar level of provision across the board, which obviously with Exchange 2003 and Windows 2003 they weren't actually being able to achieve. And of course, given the economic climate that we're just coming out of, all small, medium, all businesses really are obviously looking at direct cost savings, but without sacrificing the user experience. So that is where the client's at. They were facing some key business challenges, and as I've said, perhaps there's been a lack of investment recently, and that's seen by the fact that they're running on Exchange 2003, Windows 2003, so they've got that whole issue of the application and the operating system either going out of support or soon to go out of support. And bearing in mind that email is a key business driver, this was seen as a particular risk. So they saw, and they were probably correct in this view, they saw that this was now an opportunity not only to just discuss an upgrading of an on-premises system to the most recent version, but they also saw it as an opportunity to reassess actually how those services are provided to the business. Alongside that, they also realised that they needed to provide levels of business continuity that they currently didn't have. So within Exchange 2003, it's a single server solution. That was going to be, or that is, a key risk to the business because they had key order mailboxes sitting on that single server solution, which obviously meant there was a potential for a loss of business if that server was offline for any length of time. So they asked the question, is there a better way? And obviously they recognise that the scene has changed, and they knew that they should perhaps engage with a partner to lead them through the whole myriad of options that were now available to them that probably wasn't available to them last time they were facing these decisions when the upgrade to 2003 was undertaken. So the business impact. Well, we've touched on some of this already. Aging hardware and unsupported server applications were going to be seen as a business risk. Now, the corollary to that is the growth of PST files, because the aging hardware, the underperforming server, the lack of disk space on the Exchange infrastructure was seeing users looking for other avenues to actually get the most from their messaging system, and that led to PST file growth, which of course meant headaches with backing it up, headaches with locating those files, with corruptions, so on and so on. And risk of downtime, we've touched upon this too. The key business mailboxes hosted on the solution, they were an endpoint for orders. So therefore, if a client couldn't deliver an order in a timely fashion because there was an outage, they probably would take their business elsewhere. So that obviously could just not be acceptable to the business itself. So they were looking at providing a level of protection to the infrastructure over and above what they currently had. And obviously they were looking at simplifying client access. They have multiple locations, slow links, different profiles, different mixture of staff requirements, and essentially they wanted to introduce a user experience that was universal and was the same across the board, so that all staff felt like they were receiving similar levels of support. So we engaged with the client, we had a few initial meetings, and that assisted us in arriving at our solution. Now, one of the first questions that we would throw at the client, given the background, is, well, the scene has changed. Are you looking at going to an on-premises based solution, or are you looking at going to a cloud-based solution? So, stay as you are or deploy the newest on-premise version of Microsoft Exchange. Now, we obviously have slanted this is a cloud-based discussion, but cloud is not suitable to all customers in all circumstances. So a first pillar of any conversation is, well, can you remain on premises? And that really just encompassed having a discussion about, well, how do you upgrade from Exchange 2003 to Exchange 2013? It's a complicated path. There is no direct route. You have to go through Exchange 2010. How about hardware requirements? As we know that when you are upgrading on premises, you are having to upgrade not solely for today's usage, but the usage patterns that the customer might be encountering in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time. So you actually have to overspec typically your server hardware and understand that it's going to be underutilized. Also, the jump from 2003 to 2013 is quite a big one. So there would definitely be an element of staff retraining, and then the ongoing management costs of utilizing and looking after Exchange 2013 once you got to that particular position. And it wouldn't just be a like-for-like upgrade. It was a single server Exchange 2003 solution, but obviously we're jumping to Exchange 2013 looking at introducing business continuity, so there would be a considerable design re-engineering process to actually go through. So if we could discount on premises, what about the cloud? Now, this is not a trivial decision because we need to understand, is the business ready for the cloud? And that means just assessing the impact of either moving to the cloud or indeed not moving to the cloud. What will the cost be in either of those scenarios? And obviously engaging with a correct partner that's been through this process is going to assist greatly in navigating this particular decision. And also, if you are thinking about the cloud and you know your business is in a good position to adopt a cloud strategy, make sure you pick an easy win. Make sure you pick a service such as email that will translate well to the cloud. And obviously Exchange Online is now a maturing infrastructure, so that is an easy tick to place in that particular box. So once you've decided on cloud, then you need to determine, well, what kind of cloud do you want to go for? There are private clouds, there are public clouds. So infrastructure as a service, a private cloud, where you're probably looking at a more expensive solution, but you're getting the most flexibility out of that solution. So customizations are then probable. Your data can be protected to an nth degree. But obviously that comes at a cost. Or you could go to a public cloud, a software as a service, such as Microsoft Exchange Online, where you are in a multi-tenanted environment, where obviously your data is still going to be secure, just not as secure, where the ability to customize your environment is lessened considerably. And finally, well, a key question is, does this make my life easier? And the easiest way to take that on is, well, engage with a partner. Engage with a partner that's actually done this journey numerous times, one that probably has experience of on-premises and cloud-based solutions and knows the challenges in transitioning with the two. So once you've got through the initial discussion points, you've had the initial meetings, then you're looking at how are you going to ensure a successful project. So we would engage with the client, indeed we did engage with the client, on a discovery and requirements exercise. Now this is quite a lengthy piece of work, because you need to understand fully the client's current position and their actual business requirements. So we would look at profiling the various user types. We would look at understanding business requirements and technology requirements from a security perspective, from an identity and access management perspective, from a storage requirements perspective, and also from a business continuity perspective. And also we'd want to gauge during these meetings with key stakeholders the appetite for cloud within the business, just to make sure that they are in the right place to make the right decision at the right time, so they get the benefit both financially and from a technology perspective that they are looking for. Now from this period of the project, we should be in a position to identify the desired solution and platform. And options available to us, well, staying on premises, moving to a flavour of cloud, public or private, IaaS and SaaS, as we discussed earlier, or indeed looking at a middle ground, a hybrid solution where you have an on-premise component and you have a public cloud-based component, and you create a virtual organization between the two. And that gives you flexibility in that you can maintain mailboxes that won't suit the cloud on premises, and obviously everybody else that does suit the cloud, you can move them onto the cloud-based infrastructures. Then you need to determine your migration approach, and obviously this is governed to an nth degree by the solution or platform that you've decided to adopt. So for example, you might decide to transition all your mailboxes in a cutover. So that's characterized by the transition happening as a big bang, the transition happening within a few days, and obviously it is quick and relatively painless. You might need to move into a coexistence era where you have email coexistence as provided by stage migrations, and again this would be a relatively short-term process, but probably more mailboxes than would fit a big bang type approach. And then finally you've got the whole remote mailbox move or hybrid, where you might very well be engaging in a migration for a period of months or even years, or indeed it could be a mechanism for just sharing infrastructures because you're not actually going to migrate all your mailboxes, and this gives you a richer coexistence, so you can share free busy information, which is something you don't get with the staged approach. And finally, it might be that you need to look at a third-party migration tool to assist, so outside of the standard Microsoft definitions, and this is where talking to a partner that's actually done this process a number of times can assist you greatly. Test, adapt and implement. Well, essentially what we're saying here is when you select your partner, they are going to bring to the table a whole wealth of experience where they have actually migrated infrastructures in a similar fashion before. But obviously what this means is you have a framework, but the framework might not fit perfectly each particular migration that you're engaging on. So you run a pilot, you test your processes in the fire of the actual migration for a bunch of pilot users, and that then will allow you to meet any challenges that this particular migration might present. So by the time that you actually come to looking at migrating the whole body of the workforce, there are no surprises to be met. Okay, so just drilling down then into some of these key areas in a little bit more detail, starting off with discovery and requirements, we need to assess the impact of the potential solutions on the business. So for example, if the business is in the cloud already, we can assume that the business understands moving to the cloud for a particular application or infrastructure, and it's not going to be a complete unknown to them. Also, we can have discussions here about the opportunity cost or lost of not moving to the cloud, or indeed in moving to the cloud. So, i.e., is it the right decision at the right time? So we're not hamstringing the customer, because obviously customers at this moment in time know the key buzzword is the cloud. We want to talk to the business decision makers and understand what they wish to achieve with moving to the cloud, and then we can use our experience to indicate, well, yes, it is the right time for you to move, or perhaps no, it's not the right time for you to move. And that whole area of making sure that you've got the business behind you and it's not just an IT related decision is key to this whole process. So the in-depth discovery itself is really going to focus on the users, how they use the applications, and whether they are in an appropriate position for actually upgrading to the cloud. For example, are there any dependencies that the customer may have that could be a showstopper in moving to the cloud itself? And indeed, this is where a pilot operation is very good, because obviously it allows you to see in the round whether there are going to be issues when you do actually start moving to the cloud in itself. As touched upon, appetite for transition. Is it there within the business itself? Do they understand what it means? Do they understand the nuances of moving to the cloud as opposed to having an on-premises based infrastructure? That could be as simple as just outlining that this is no longer your own infrastructure, it's a shared infrastructure, and if there are issues with that infrastructure, you are not going to get the responses that you're probably used to with your on-premises approach. And then from our perspective, we would document all our findings and recommendations. It would provide us with a history of our decision points. We could see it as an evolving framework so that our thought processes are documented, so we can see how our decisions are arrived at if at any point in the future we need to re-engineer any of the solution itself. And in its entirety, this whole discovery and requirements phase is useful because it will allow us to identify quick wins for moving to the cloud that can obviously bring benefit to the business, but also it will allow us to identify gaps that Office 365 in terms of its functionality and its services could fill, and that could be quite a key part of this whole process, because obviously you sign up to a license plan, and that license plan will probably offer you more than just Exchange Online. Now, our mantra is cloud and less, and obviously building upon that whole discovery framework piece is a qualifying in or a qualifying out process to ensure that the decisions that we take mean that an optimum transition route exists to get the business into the cloud itself. And we, based on our own experiences and Microsoft recommendations, have an evolving decision framework process. And I say evolving because obviously the cloud is continually evolving, so we need to keep abreast of these developments to ensure that we understand the technology and what it can actually bring to the table. Key to this process is identifying potential constraints to cloud adoption. So for example, is there going to be on-premises infrastructure work that needs to be undertaken to meet cloud requirements? So if you've got Outlook 2003 clients, they're not supported on Exchange Online, so will the business need therefore to undertake that before we can be in a position to start the move to cloud? Of course, networking is key to successful adoption of Exchange Online, and we need to make sure that the network links to Exchange Online, the internet, etc., are going to support the traffic. Now that is just not day-to-day traffic, because obviously in the early stages of adoption there's going to be quite a lot of migration traffic too, so we need to ensure that the bandwidth is available to allow those processes to complete. And then security requirements. Is the data going to be secure? And also support requirements. Just going back to that point that the support model will change, that you can no longer just phone up Jim in the IT department and have a rant at him if Exchange is offline, because obviously you're now relying on Microsoft and their infrastructure. And the benefit there, of course, is it's a huge infrastructure benefiting from huge economies of scale, so really you shouldn't be in that position, but it is important to understand that it could potentially happen. And compliance and governance issues as well. Think about how you are going to manage and host data, manage and look after data that is now hosted outside of your infrastructure. It may be indeed hosted outside of your country. Is that going to be an issue? The impact of the ecosystem. We take quite a bit of care over this, because obviously email is a very mature product and there are a lot of third parties now that support email. So it might be mobility management, it might be archiving functionality, it might be signatures. Okay, has the company determined how they are going to either transition those services to the cloud, or indeed how are they going to readopt those processes if they're not supportable in their current format? And again, that can be key in this whole qualifying in or qualifying out process. And we're going back to that old chestnut again, appetite within the business. This should not be an IT decision. It should be a business decision. Is the business in the correct place? Opportunity lost versus opportunity cost of moving to the cloud. And indeed, making sure that we select an easy service to move to the cloud. We get a quick win so that we can build confidence in the cloud if it doesn't exist already. And this can then be the launch pad for moving to other Office 365 services to remove infrastructure, free up resources, so on and so on, with the move to the cloud itself. So next stage in this whole process would be preparing for the transition. Essentially, we're talking about options for migration here. Big Bang versus coexistence. Big Bang obviously supports an infrastructure of a certain size, where you can actually move the data in a weekend or a few days. But obviously if your infrastructure is too large for that, you've got to discuss coexistence, and we've kind of touched on this already. We said, well, okay, there's an email type coexistence as opposed to a richer coexistence where you can share FreeBSD information. So that's a decision that has to be taken early on. We've also touched upon the benefits of hybrid. It might very well be that you've decided that only a portion of your mailboxes can be moved to the cloud, or it might be that your migration strategy is going to take a period of months. So you create this virtual infrastructure out of on-premises components and Microsoft Online components, and this gives you not only the rich coexistence that you may be looking for, but also it gives you an ability to onboard and offboard mailboxes. And sometimes this is not drawn out enough, because what we're saying here is you've got complete flexibility. You move to the cloud, you're on it for a period of time, you find that it isn't giving you the benefits that you expected. Because you are in a hybrid mode, it's an easy job to move mailboxes back onto your on-premises environment and decommission the cloud. So benefits of hybrid should not be overlooked. And then also you need to discuss identity management. This is going to be a key area of concern over the coming years, because obviously as services move up to the cloud, you have the need to manage how people log on. Now, it might very well be that you're a customer that is happy to allow users to log on to each individual service, or it might very well be that you wish to simplify that whole process so that users can log on using their same username and same password, or it might be that you go for a true single sign-on approach where users log on to Active Directory, for example, and then we can use that ID to access other federated cloud services such as Exchange Online. So identity management is going to be a key discussion, and one of the things you need to consider there is if you're looking at reducing server footprints, you could even think about moving some of that identity management infrastructure. If you're looking at true single sign-on, ADFS for example, you could look at that, moving that to the Microsoft Azure platform, so you're not actually replacing Exchange infrastructure with identity management infrastructure in an on-premises environment. And finally, planned integration with your third parties. Touched upon this, but if you've got signature software, if you've got archiving requirements, how are you going to move that kind of functionality to the cloud? Or indeed, how are you going to provide a level of support so that you're not reducing the email service that you currently have? And then testing and adapting. Now, we've said that really it is important to select the right partner, such as BlueSource, who understand the on-premises technologies and the cloud technologies, so they can deliver an end-to-end solution using a proven, repeatable process to transition your service from the on-premises infrastructure to the cloud itself. Okay, so as we say, selecting the right partner is going to be key. Now, you should involve the business, because we heartily recommend utilizing pilots. So imagine a proof of concept, and that requires the business to identify users who are IT savvy, can assist with user acceptance testing, understand that there will probably be periods of interruption to the service as they are in the pilot, but also that the pilot users come from all the elements, all the different facets of the business, so we get a true flavour of how the business operates, how we move those different operations up to Exchange Online, and how it impacts them. And what this does is it allows us to take our framework, our proven repeatable process, and temper it for this particular migration, because we know that all migrations are different, so that we can fine-tune our process. So when the general transition begins, there are no surprises for us, and we can ensure that we move the clients in a timely fashion, that their data is available, that the third-party infrastructure is in place and functioning, and that email just works. And that includes obviously the repointing of the Outlook clients, so on and so forth. So once we've been through that whole process of testing and fine-tuning, we can obviously move the users themselves, and really that would involve the client as much or as little as they require. So for example, they may wish to be involved so that knowledge transfer occurs, so that they understand the solution, they understand it, how it works, or it might be that they need to have a more in-depth understanding, because after the pilot and the process has been set up, proven, etc., etc., that they're going to take over the task of migrating the general population up to Exchange Online. And indeed, if you're looking at a hybrid solution, well, this portion of the solution would require a larger impact from the customer, because obviously they're going to be looking after this process in a longer term than perhaps most migrations to the cloud entail. Now, it is important that we can measure the results of the move to the cloud. Okay, so we're looking at tangibilities here, so we can check that the client is getting what they expect from the solution itself. Obviously, a key measure is going to be cost savings. So we would expect to see direct cost savings from moving to as a pay-as-you-grow licensing model, i.e. on a monthly basis you are only paying for the licenses that you are consuming, and obviously that's got to hit the bottom line. That's got to make this whole process cheaper than it normally would be otherwise. And again, you should expect to see perhaps cost reductions come in terms of the management overheads. You're not managing the infrastructure anymore, and hardware costs, you're not paying for the hardware, so you should expect to see, and it should be measurable in that particular way. Not to be overlooked, the evergreen solution. As we've seen, our clothing retailer was on Exchange 2003, Windows 2003, so they are slow to upgrade. A lot of organizations are like, well, why should we move from a system that works? And then obviously you're forced to, what that means is that you're not in control of your destiny. You're being forced to upgrade because things have just slipped through your fingers. So yes, there is a one-off pain to moving to Office 365. However, once you're onto Office 365, you're never going to need to upgrade again, because obviously that is now the responsibility of Microsoft, and they will always ensure that the platform will remain current. Yes, you can defer an upgrade if you've got a business reason, but you are limited to the period of time that deferral can be in place for. And it's also worth knowing that most of the upgrades now to Exchange are aimed at Office 365 Exchange Online and are applied to Exchange Online far before they're ever released out to the on-premises market. So that's worth bearing in mind. Business continuity. Well, you're going to benefit from the most up-to-date architectures. Obviously, Exchange Online makes use of database availability groups, and if we relate back to the customer that we're under discussion here, they wanted to bring in more up-to-date business continuity measures, and one of the key things for them was if they wanted similar levels of a service level agreement for an on-premises infrastructure it would be very expensive for them to achieve. And obviously Office 365 is an easy way to get those enterprise level SLAs for small and medium businesses. Productivity. This would be an obvious win for your users because they're now running up-to-date versions of the software, and obviously there is access to new products and services that may improve collaboration within the business that are available with Office 365. And then from an IT team perspective, well, there's key wins here because they're no longer having to manage, maintain, monitor the email system. They're no longer having to continually retrain to maintain their skill sets to manage that email system, and instead they can now focus on projects that have a direct consequence to the users and the business, which obviously adds to productivity all round. So with all migrations, there are always key lessons to be learnt, and as it says there, it's an ongoing learning process, and this one was no different. In fact, what it proved again was the value of the pilot, because moving into that pilot stage allowed us to iron out potential differences between functionality offered in Exchange 2003 and in Exchange Online. The business used shared mailboxes and inbox rules, and obviously translating those from that older infrastructure to the newer infrastructure that Exchange Online offers proved a slightly problematic process, and we needed to iron out our understanding of how they use these rules, and B, how they were actually placed into operation so that we could maintain that level of functionality but on the newer infrastructure. So what should you take from this lunch and learn? Well, go away and identify the most appropriate cloud ready applications. Remember what we said, build confidence by benefiting from an easy win, and email certainly falls into that circumstance, falls into that situation now. Consider a return on investment exercise. So understand what your email solution is costing you today in terms of management, in terms of storage, in terms of downtime, and then see how much you could save potentially on moving to Exchange Online. Hopefully you'd see it's a cost neutral, or indeed generate a surplus for you. It could indeed in fact pay for itself, but carry out a return on investment exercise to uncover that. Obtain business sponsorship. I think this has been a key theme throughout this discussion. This should not be an IT-led decision. It should be a decision that the business has bought into, that they wish to shift their model of delivering services from on-premises to the cloud. They're looking at moving from a CapEx model of expenditure to an OpEx model of expenditure, and that means ensuring you have business sponsorship. And then implement one of these services. So implement Exchange Online, move into that pilot POC stage, see how the benefits it brings could transform your business. And if after this you have seen that there is an avenue that you wish to further explore, come and talk to us. Come and talk to BlueSource, and obviously we can share with you our experiences and work with you from moving you from an on-premises infrastructure to something that's functioning in the cloud. And with that, I'll hand back to Amanda. Thanks, Amanda.